Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dallas Social Toastmasters. It is February 25th, and we are recovering from a cold week last week in Dallas, where we did a social meeting, but we are here to do a real, complete, full meeting tonight. Let me go over just a couple of quick things. We've got everybody pretty much assigned for roles. I think we're good with that. Evaluators have a copy of their goals already. Hopefully everybody is up, stable, and no internet issues tonight, no power issues again this week. We are recording the meeting, of course, as always. For anyone who is new, I'll just go over a couple of very quick things on navigation. If you're on PC or Mac, you'll probably see a list of icons, or I should say windows at the top of everybody who will fit in terms of their video. Over each of those, if you hover, you will find that there is a set of ... You can pin somebody in the large speaker window if you need to do that, in particular for timer. If you are watching for the timing flags, pin your timer. There's also toward the right-hand side top, there's a view button, and you can select either the speaker view, which changes the speaker into the large window every time the speaker changes for any significant length of time, or the gallery view, which will show you everyone. Both views have their value. We go back and forth between them. You get to select it, I don't. Going to try to keep most people on mute tonight, just to keep the noise down, but feel free to unmute yourself if you need to or have anything that you need to say. Quickly on our agenda, let me point out a few things on our agenda. The agenda can be found by going to Dallas Social Toastmasters, which is our website.com. And in the third column, under the members section, you will see current agenda. If you click on current agenda, I will go ahead and click on it. I may not like the way it comes up. Nope, it came up okay this time. You will see a copy of our agenda, which has got the meeting theme and all of the meeting roles so that you can follow along with who's doing what. Or if you have a question like, do I need to send this to the person who is the vote counter tonight? Who is that? You'll notice that it's Mark Haddad right here. And you can always bring up a copy of this to keep track of who the players are tonight and where we are in the meeting. With that, I think we are all set to go with the first part of our meeting. Invocation and pledge tonight is going to be being done by Mark Sims on a brand new spanking fast PC. So Mark, take it away. On mute though.
The computer doesn't work. No sound.
Microphone's bad.
Very common these days. You're on mute, moron. And thank you all today or tonight for showing up. We have a good crowd tonight. I'm very pleased to see our new members and then also our various guests tonight, Michael Dana and Mark Haddad, not really a guest, but it's good to see him again. And Munish Gupta, good to see him attending again. And just a couple of words, especially if you've not been here in a while. If you see us during the course of the evening, do that. That's the best we can do for applause in the Zoom environment. And thinking about the invocation for tonight, a couple of nights ago at a different Toastmasters meeting, I had to come up with a word of the day off the cuff. And I came up with the word versatile. And that's something that we are all challenged to be very much. I mean, obviously, because of the pandemic, we've had to be more versatile in how we meet, whether it's Toastmasters or any other group. We're all very familiar now with Zoom meetings. And then last week, in the very unusual weather, we all, again, had to be called on to be even more versatile. Sometimes in just going through the basics of either dealing or having or not having utilities and simply living life, we were having challenged a little more than what we normally are. So it seems to be not the word of the day for this meeting, but maybe the watchword of the day is that we all need to be more versatile. And at this point, we'll turn that over to our Toastmaster tonight, Dagan Newland.
All right, thank you, Mark. Today's theme, I came up with be prepared and do a good turn daily. So I kind of thought, be prepared is kind of a good situation to talk about due to our particular weather we just had this past week. And some people may not have been prepared for that. So I thought that'd be some good thing to talk about and be prepared in different situations in life. But before we get into that, I'd like to go over our duty holders. So our first duty holder tonight is going to be our timer, which is Lee King. So Lee, can you please explain your role as timer?
Yes, this evening I'll be timing the various portions of the meeting. When the speakers qualify on time, they will see the green card. When they are halfway through their qualifying time, they will then see the yellow card. And finally, when the speaker has close to exceeding their qualifying time, they will receive the red card, in which case I'll have 30 seconds to wrap up. However, I will continue to hold up the red card until they stop talking, and then I'll give a report at the end of the meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lee. Tonight, as grammarian, is going to be John Vessels. John, can you please explain your role as a grammarian?
Well, hello, everybody. Tonight, I will be the grammarian, and the grammarian's job is to listen to everybody's grammar. And I will make a report and track good uses of the English language, bad uses of the English language, interesting phrases, things like that, so that we can learn from our grammarian. Also, I will be introducing the word of the day, and today's word of the day is concoct. Concoct means to prepare or make by combining ingredients, especially in cookery, to devise, make up, or contrive. So to use it in a sentence, I concocted a way to keep my house warm even though I didn't have any electricity. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you, John. And tonight, performing two duties tonight is going to be Mark Haddad with vote counter and all counters. So you can please explain your roles, Mark.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hello, everyone. I will be first as the ah counter. I will be looking for those ever-present filler words that we so love to lean on in our speeches. The ums, the uhs, the so's that feel so easy to fill in when you have a pause. It's a good crutch word to lean on, but after a while it does become repetitive and a distraction to your audience. So when you do make that sound, I will use a virtual ding. Is that just as a reminder? And I will give my reports on how everyone did at the end of the meeting. My second role will be the vote counter, which is probably the most self-explanatory role here in Toastmasters. I will be tallying votes after each of the major sections tonight. So for table topics, speeches, evaluations, and best of the big three. You can vote for each by just sending me a direct message and I will tally each. And at the end of the meeting, I will give out the prestigious virtual ribbons to all of our winners. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you, Mark. And tonight performing posture monitor is Karen Smith. So Karen, please explain your role.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. As posture monitor, I'll be watching all meeting attendees to identify unusual or distracting posture, such as head scratching or forward and reverse move the fig leaf movement, the hair flipping, things of that nature. When I notice these slips, I will note the posture. I do not have a bell to ring, but I will note the posture. And at the end of the meeting, I'll report these results. And at the end of the meeting, I will give a report of each person and their postures noted. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Karen. All right, so back to the theme of the meeting. The first part is be prepared. So, just think about, we all heard about the power outages because of the, electricity grid. A lot of the power grid, got frozen. So at least that's what I heard is why they start producing power. So if they have been prepared and did the prep work to help alleviate that, the Texas power grid probably would not have suffered as much. And I actually heard at one point, we were only like a few hours away of being a total blackout of all of Texas. So that's really surprising that, and this happened, almost about 10 years ago, the same thing happened. And they did not learn the lessons from last time. So we know, them as the electrical company, Encore needs to, or not Encore, forget the name of it, but they need to be more prepared. Was it Rob?
ERCOT.
ERCOT, yes, ERCOT. If they've been more prepared, not as many people have probably been suffering through this last snow ice storm. But we can relate that to ourselves too. Be prepared in really our everyday lives as well. Particularly like weather. If your power went out, were you prepared or had a plan to compensate for that? Well, I can say myself, we were not as prepared ourselves for this. We kind of just roll with the punches. When the power went out, we stayed at home. But at one point, at least this house is like half gas. So I was able to turn the burners on in the stove, and we have built-in heaters in the bathrooms which we lit. So it did keep the coldness down a little bit, but it was still quite cold in here. Even, because obviously those burners, only radiate within those particular rooms. But of course, at one point, each time we had a power outage, the power outage stayed on longer and longer. So at one point, we actually went into our vehicle for a couple of hours to stay warm that way. And luckily, after a couple of hours, the power came on and finally stayed on. But also, when it comes to being prepared, that comes to like, I'll take a personal situation for myself. When it comes to bills, before my previous, before they actually, I talked about it before, they didn't really demote me, but they gave me a new job title. Instead of receiving manager, I'm receiving captain. Of course, the company was trying to save money and all that, so they gave me a new title, which obviously means less pay too, but I still do the same work. So I had to rethink about, how to do my bills. Before, I had, weekly amount of money. I didn't have to worry about, paying my bills a particular time. But now that I have less money, I can make sure I dedicate, so much money each week to pay my bills. I got to be a little more prepared with my bills. And also, actually, come back to the home situation. Back to like the power outages when it's cold. A lot of people were burning propane and other things inside their house. And some of these things that they were burning, they were giving off carbon monoxide. And actually, some people have died in the past because of this. So they go out and buy a propane or some kind of heater to burn inside the house, but they don't think about or be prepared to also purchase a carbon monoxide warning system or, one of those detectors. So that's all about being prepared. All right, so we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. Let's move on to our speeches, which is really exciting because we both have two new time speakers. First, giving their icebreakers, so it's really exciting. And first on my list is going to be Cheryl, and evaluating her is Mark Schroeder. So, if Mark, can you give us how you're going to be evaluating Cheryl tonight?
Sure, and thank you, Dagan. This is going to be Cheryl's first speech with us, so that it's obviously her icebreaker speech. This is a baseline setting for all practical purposes. We want to see what skills Cheryl already has and what skills she would benefit most in her speaking ability if she were able to acquire them. So the goal in this particular case is for me to give an evaluation of what her style is and what we notice that she already does well and what she could benefit from in the future. The speech is going to be 4 to 6 minutes. Take it away. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mark. So let's welcome Cheryl Slagle with a snapshot of me and what brought me to Toastmasters. A snapshot of me and what brought me to Toastmasters. Cheryl Slagle.
And just a quick note, make sure that you have your timer pinned or visible so that you will be able to see the timing flags.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl Slagle. I'm relatively new to Toastmasters. This is my icebreaker speech. So here is a snapshot of me and what brought me to Toastmasters. I was born and raised in Amarillo, Texas. That's Amarillo, if you're from there. A few fun facts about my hometown are they were the top helium producer in the world from 1929 to 1968. It's also home to the American Quarter Horse Association, the infamous Cadillac Ranch, Paladar Canyon, which is the second largest canyon next to the Grand Canyon in the United States, and where you can get a free 72-ounce steak if you can eat it in an hour with all the fixins at the Big Texan. You may ask why I left all that. Excuse me. I moved to Dallas in 1990 to pursue a career in the music industry. You may think Dallas is an odd destination for the music business, but the 6 big distribution companies were in Dallas, Los Angeles, and New York. So I took the baby step and moved to Dallas. I didn't have any friends or family or a job when I moved to Dallas. But after I finally got my job with Polygram Group Distribution, not only did I feel like I hit the music biz jackpot, I also made lifelong friends. If you're a music lover like I am, you know that marketing music was a dream. And one of the most memorable events was when we won a sales contest for Kiss's new album. And we had a private party at my boss's house with most of the band members in attendance, where Gene Simmons challenged us all to a music trivia contest. Of course, he won because he's a genius musically and otherwise, but it's still one of the most memorable events of my career. Well, all that fun ended when everything basically went digital, and I decided to move to Denver. I had visited my brother in Rapid City, South Dakota, and my sister and her family lives in Amarillo, and Denver's almost exactly in the middle. I thought it'd be a great way to see them more. I worked for Beef It's What's for Dinner in the membership department, and I headed the member recruit a member program. And again, I thought it was an exciting marketing role. And that's when Matthew McConaughey was our spokesperson, but I never got to meet him. I never fully acclimated to Denver because it's so laid back and I missed the energy of a big city. So I decided to move to Chicago. I'd visited a few times and had friends and family, and I landed a great job with the incredible edible egg in the consumer marketing department. And it was a super exciting time in the consumer marketing area because that's when social media was gaining so much traction. And with all my other responsibilities, because we were a nonprofit, we wore many hats. I was tasked with starting our Instagram and Pinterest accounts, and later took on our Twitter account as well. And I loved it. I learned so much. I learned how to boil a hard-boiled egg, and I can peel hard-boiled eggs with the best of them. But I quickly realized that I was not built for those brutal Chicago winters. And I decided to move back home to Texas in 2015. But before I did, I left my long puffy coat in my very interesting and sometimes scary alley, which is another story for another time. And when I moved back in 2015, I think it took 2 full years for me to fully thaw out. And I was missing that puffy coat last week. Now I'm an account executive for a small marketing firm in Dallas, and we help nonprofits with their planned giving fundraising. And one of the reasons why I decided to come to Toastmasters is because we're all working remotely, our team and our clients. And I just wanted to be better at overall communicating. On a more personal note, I love yoga, cycling around White Rock Lake, learning acoustic guitar, and I have an adorable rescue dachshund, Rosemary, from Chicago, who brings me so much joy and entertains me every day. So I'm looking forward to this journey with you all. And one of my biggest goals is to be an overall better communicator, and I feel that you will help me achieve that goal. So thank you for listening. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right, so our next speaker is going to be Y. Paul, and evaluating him tonight is Karen Lee. So Karen, can you explain how you're gonna evaluate Paul?
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, yes, and especially EPAL, the purpose of EPAL's project is for him to introduce himself to our club and to learn the basic structure of a public speech. And EPAL, I don't know what your title is. What is your speech title?
It's called EPAL of all trades, master of none.
Thank you. Mr. Toastmaster?
All right, thank you, Karen. And I apologize, it's EPAL. I said it wrong.
It's okay.
All right, so let's welcome EPAL with EPAL of all trades, master of none. EPAL of all trades, master of none.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, for the wonderful introduction. Fellow Toastmasters, or fellow members and guests, I celebrated my first birthday on the freeway in a car packed to the brim with one too many boxes. Little did I know that this would set the stage for the adventure that I've come to know as my life today. As a result of my parents' project-based jobs and proclivity for exploring new cities, I lived what I could describe only as a nomadic childhood. While this may have seemed exciting in retrospect, at the time it felt anything but. As an only child with immigrant parents from Taiwan, I already had enough trouble fitting in. The burden of having to move every 2 or so years only made my life more difficult. I distinctly remember a day in 5th grade when a strange feeling of happiness washed upon me as I walked home with 2 of my classmates. I felt like for the first time in my life, I understood what having a friend group meant. Unfortunately, this happiness was short-lived, for within the week, I got the dreaded, "Hey, EPAL, we're planning on moving, what do you think?" talk from my parents. The open-ended nature of the question was a nice gesture from them to give me an illusion of choice in the matter, but even then I was smarter than that. I knew that it was time to mentally prepare for another vacation. Now I put that in quotes because my parents were never really big into planned vacations, and whenever I would complain to them about this, they would point to our frequent moves as evidence that we did indeed have abundant family vacations. So that experience marked the beginning of our journey from California to Oregon, just one of our nearly 15 moves. By this point, we had lived on the East Coast, the Midwest, the South, as well as the West Coast, and I wasn't even a teenager yet. As a silver lining of sorts, we did eventually end up staying in Oregon for what felt like a lifetime at that point. And while it was only 5 years, I was thankful to be able to stay in one place throughout high school. As I trudged through my teens, I slowly started to appreciate the benefits of my nomadic childhood. I realized that while I struggled to feel like I had a home base that so many of my peers took for granted, I was miles ahead in personal development. Resourceful, adaptable, introspective, compassionate, well-rounded. These were all words that came to be associated with myself, traits that I never would have developed had it not been for the diverse experiences I had lived through. But as the end of high school drew near, the one characteristic that stood out to me as something I wanted to master was that of well-roundedness. It was kind of ironic, the idea that I wanted to master the ability to be good at many things. Maybe it was the emphasis put on well-roundedness during my college applications that triggered this sentiment. Or maybe it was the fact that my parents had made me dabble in a smattering of extracurriculars, including music, sports, social activities, even finance at one point, in addition to my schoolwork. Whatever the case, it paved the way for the rest of my life. As I moved on to college, I found myself obsessed with becoming proficient at everything I could. I joined the Emergency Medical Society, participated in intramural sports, took classes from African music to English literature, and even had some fun in the breakdancing club. I derived significant pleasure from collecting various skills to place in my personal toolbox, and it gave me a sense of power and confidence as I armed myself with the ammunition of knowledge. Yet, I often found myself frustrated that I was never really the best at any of these activities. I started to wonder why I had such a desire to be well-rounded. As a kid, I had found moderate interest in many things, but to my parents' chagrin, I never really was focused on just one thing. Perhaps it was because I didn't have the discipline to train in one activity long enough to become a master, or maybe I just lacked the talent to rise to the top. While having many activities on my resume helped with college admissions, I realized sooner or later I was going to need to pick one career to focus on. This to me was a daunting realization. It was around this time that my dad's glaucoma had started to worsen. This was a battle he had been dealing with for a couple of years at this point, and his rapid deterioration in vision had a strong impact on me, as it was the first time there was something extrinsic in my life that provided motivation for me to pursue a goal. By my junior year of college, I was working in a glaucoma research lab every day after class, and it became clear towards the end of the year that medicine was the path I would be embarking on. On this path, I developed a group of friends who shared my personality traits and goals in life. And I felt a sense of community that had always seemed just out of reach when I was growing up. In medical school, my sense of identity continued to strengthen, and it became easier to focus on what was important since I had a more concrete goal in mind. The nagging desire to be well-rounded persisted, though, especially when it came time to decide on a medical specialty. Like many times before, the decision was difficult because I had some interest in everything, but I didn't really love any one thing in particular. Eventually, I stumbled upon the hidden gem of anesthesiology and critical care medicine, a nearly perfectly well-rounded field where thoroughly understanding every body system was paramount, where I could interact with personnel from every department of the hospital, from the ICU to the clinic to the operating room, and where personality traits I had spent the last 2 decades developing would be showcased in the best way. Now that I'm on a solid path in my professional life, I want to return some of my focus back onto my personal life and continue to apply this philosophy of balance there as well. Public speaking is something that never really came naturally to me, and social anxiety has been an issue I've been working on to improve my whole life. It's what spurred me to join Toastmasters, a forum to interact with people from various walks of life, to have discussions about topics that I never would have been able to concoct on my own. Through continuous discussion, I hope to be able to further my breadth of worldly knowledge so that I'm able to hold a conversation with anyone about any topic. I spent much of my life chasing excellence in probably too many different fields. Yet, despite the drawbacks of not being a master of anything, I continue to find that with each additional piece of knowledge and skill that I collect, there's a small but noticeable uptick in my happiness meter. In a world where everyone is trying to find their purpose for living, I take pride in having been able to identify at least one meaningful goal that keeps me excited to wake up every day. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Epaw. All right, now I'm going to call upon a timer's report. Did both speakers qualify on time?
Carol qualified at 4 minutes, 30 seconds, and Paul qualified at 6 minutes and 36 seconds.
All right, thank you, Lee. So please take a moment and send your private vote to Mark Haddad, who you thought was the best speaker. And let me do that right now too. And also, if you have any comments for either of the two speakers, you can always send those directly to them as well. Of course, they will be getting their formal evaluation at the end, but you can always have your own input as well if you want to. So please, think about giving them a comment as well. All right, so we'll get into more of the theme of being prepared. I was also thinking, the reverse of cold weather, it can be hot weather, and sometimes, we have power outages during the hot summer too. So at least at that point, you can open up the windows in your apartment or your house, maybe get a little breeze in, but even that can be only so much when the temperatures can reach over 100 sometimes, especially in the hottest parts of the year, around August time. So actually, the last time we had a power outage in the summer, we went out and bought a couple of battery powered fans. So that also helps. So it's kind of just be prepared for things like that. And also your cars, if you're taking a long trip, that's cold outside, make sure you bring warm blankets. Make sure you bring something to, have an air pump in case your tire goes low. First aid supplies, some kind of reflective device that you can put on, behind your car in case you have car troubles. Things like that, you just want to think about being prepared. So pretty much in all aspects of your life, you can always think about something that can be prepared. And another reason I brought this up, because just because based on the past situation that I wasn't really prepared. But also, I was an Eagle Scout, and that's the motto of the Boy Scouts, is be prepared. And the slogan of the Scouts is do a good turn daily. So it's always good to do something good for somebody else. You know, even if it's holding the door open for somebody coming in, or, you know, just saying hello. You never know what somebody's going through in each individual day. They could be down and out about something. You just saying hi to them could lift their spirits. That's doing a good turn. Just think about that. You know, try to do a good turn daily. I know we don't get out and about as much anymore, but you know, when we do, you know, think about doing something good for somebody else. So that will conclude my portion of the meeting, and we're going to move on into table topics, which is going to be performed by our president, Mark Sims. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Dagan. In table topics, you get an opportunity to speak impromptu and to develop your skills in that manner, which may bear fruit in numerous situations, whether a job interview, an unexpected attention, or request to speak at work. So it's a really fun, really great exercise. There are 2 rules. Remember to speak for at least 1 minute, no more than 2.5 minutes. So it's a 1 to 2 minute time within 30 seconds grace. So please keep your eye on Lee for the time. And also, you want to use the word of the day. And the word of the day that John provided is concoct. To Dagan is showing it. To devise, for example. To would you give that definition again, John?
To prepare or make by combining ingredients, especially in cookery, or to devise, make up, or contrive.
There you go. That's a little more elaborative than what I was doing. So please use the word of the day. Please speak for at least 1 to 2.5 minutes. Our first contestant I'm going to call on is Mark Haddad. And the question is, since we're talking about being prepared for emergencies, things like that, what's the biggest emergency situation you've ever had to go through, Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master, for that question. Biggest emergency, one that comes to mind actually is a time that I went camping a couple of years ago. Did the whole 9 yards, slept outside in a tent, etc. Came back home and realized I still had some clean clothes left over in my bag. Me living alone and not liking doing laundry, I would never be one to waste clean clothes, especially clean underwear. So I reused a pair from my bag and woke up the next morning with ticks on me.
Oh.
Yes. So I, after the initial panic in the shower and taking them off and wondering what it was, realizing I had ticks on my body, I had to go and concoct ways to figure out what I needed to do next. And after looking online and within 20 minutes, probably assuming that I was going to die very soon of Lyme disease, I actually just ended up going to the doctor. He said it was not a big deal. He gave me some antibiotics, which were helpful. He said, you do have to monitor in these situations. If your symptoms get worse, come back and we'll give you something stronger, because Lyme disease is a thing. But I did learn a very important lesson, that you don't, when sleeping outside, you don't ever rewear your clothes from your camping bag as soon as you get home, because whatever's living out there, you don't want making a new home on yourself or in your home, which they also do too. They do like to lay eggs as well, which I also found out through my research. Back to you, Mr. Topics Master.
Yes, and I've had a little experience with ticks myself. Not good. Our next question is for Munish, who's visiting us tonight. And Munish, all last week, the whole buzz in the nation, the USA, was about the terrible winter storm in Texas. Well, did y'all hear about this in India? And if so, what did you think about it?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Last week in America, the big news story was the terrible cold winter or weather in Texas. That's all we could talk about. Did you hear about this in India? If so, what was your thoughts?
Good morning, everybody. There was a terrible weather in Texas, which I didn't hear, to be honest with you, because I read the news, but I don't read international news, what is happening, especially about the weather in Texas. But my friend, few of my friends, they're very good at concocting the story that the weather is horrible over there. But I don't trust them because I know they know how to cook up the story. They are very good at concocting the story. But in my city, weather was cold 4 days ago. I used to wear warm clothes. But for the past 4 days, the weather is getting changed. Yesterday was my first day. I wore shirt. And day before yesterday, I was wearing only a sweater. When I went to my office, which is fully AC, but we don't use AC, all the windows were shut. I was not able to stand because the weather is getting changed over here. So weather plays a very important role in our life. Whether I live in a city where weather is terribly hot, where one can fry an egg on the sidewalk in the summer, or either weather is terribly cold. So I hate cold weather. I do not know how Texas people, when they'll get up in the morning and if they have to take a shower, especially with the cold water, how will they take if the weather is cold over there? When the weather is cold over here before COVID-19, I used to go to health club. After taking sauna bath and steam bath, then I used to take a shower with cold water. Otherwise, I can't take. I hate cold weather. I pray to the God that that because of global warming, this problem is rising. This weather should not subside. It should not be cold, and people can enjoy their life. Thank you. Over to the Toastmaster, please.
Thank you, and we heartily agree. This next question is for our visitor tonight, Michael Dana. And Michael, obviously the theme of tonight was talking about preparedness. Well, are you a big planner and preparer, or do you just respond to things off the cuff?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters. It's nice to be back. I'm a bit rusty. I haven't done table topics in probably 15 years, I believe. But to answer the question, I guess I would say I'm a hybrid. Sometimes you can hit me there, you got me. I would like to think that I plan ahead, yes, but then there's sometimes I just concoct something on the fly and just adapt with it. Because sometimes spontaneity is fun, so, you're driving home and you always turn right. Maybe I want to turn left. I just want to try a new direction to get home. But yes, I probably did plan when they. I usually take the warnings and everything that they put out. How to prepare. So I usually do it, but then I mess it up anyway. So as much as I think about it, probably because I'm absent-minded. For example, I guess they say drip your water, during the storm, and I'm like, okay, so I dripped all the cold water during this event, and then the coldest night, we woke up here in Texas, and it was, I think, 0 degrees. Well, we were turning the warm water on through the day, and then at night we were leaving it off, but at night we would drip it. But that night we didn't drip it, so of course the pipe froze, and then I panicked, and then I didn't know where my main water shutoff was. I thought I did, but I didn't. So now there's all this snow out in the front. So yeah, I'd like to think that I was thinking ahead, but then again, I guess I didn't. So hybrid. I'd go with hybrid. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master and fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you, Michael. Next question is for John Vessels. And John, if you would tell us, are you a big worrier about these situations that might come up, or do you just kind of take it as it comes?
Well, thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I prepare for things. I concoct plans for how things go out. But in the end, when it really happens, I just go with the flow and just write it out and do what I can. I mean, we were completely without power for 4 days. They turned the water off on the 4th day, so now I've been without water for 6 days. So today it's begun to wear on me just a little bit, but I usually just write it out and we'll get there somehow, some way soon. So it's just, most of the time it's easier just to not get all wound up and don't worry about it. There's only so much you can do. You do what you can, then you'll have to let the rest of it go, or it just drags you down and makes it worse. So that's me mostly. I do have my worry moments. You know, I was born Catholic. We're always the guilty ones. So, you know, I held on to some guilt. I worry about some things, but then there was a cutoff point. I said, okay, that's enough. I did it. I did my piece. Move on. Let's go. That's me. Back to you, Mark.
That is very commendable. I'm one of the Dallas-Fort Worth area residents that hears 2 weeks from today, there might be precipitation. And I'm going, oh, please God, why? So that's very good. Final table topics question is for Karen Smith. And this relates to the other part of the theme on doing a good turn for people. Karen, tell us about a good deed or good turn that someone did for you.
Okay. Good evening, Toastmasters. Good thing that someone has done for me. Recently, well, not so recently, maybe about 6 months ago now, 7 or 8 months ago now, back in June of last year, and I'm sure that I've had more recent things that have been done nice for me, but in June of last year, I went to work, and I got to work, and I work in the medical field, and my temperature was a little warm. I was like, oh, okay, it's not that big of a deal. And so I sat there at work and took my hat off, and I was like, let's just take the temp again. Took the temp again, and I was still warm. So I was sent home from work. And when I got home, I'm like, oh, okay, let me go to the ER. Went to the ER, not ER, well, one of the little clinics, mock clinics, doc in the box. Went to the ER and got a little COVID test, and it came back positive. And so that's the death of you right there. Now I really feel sick. I automatically feel super, super sick. So I immediately went home, got into my bed, and got into started taking the things that you're supposed to take, all the vitamins and things the list of things that they concoct for you to take, all of your vitamin C, your vitamin E, and your the rest of the multivitamin C requests that you take. But before the end of the day, I had friends that knew about my sickness. I think I told my pastor, and I had people that knew about my sickness. So I had friends that went out, and I had a whole list of things from Eatsy's. I had things from Kroger's, all the prepared foods, all of the water, that the high pH water. I've had a lot of that, a lot of the prepared foods, lots of fruits, lots of citrus fruits. All of those were put into my garage and let down by a couple of my friends. And I had really nothing to worry about. I even received an Echo Dot, and just so I wouldn't have to get out of my bed. My brother sent me an Echo Dot, and I had sisters that sent me socks and things of that nature. There's things that I wouldn't even think of during a sickness. Popsicles that helped at the end of it. And then I had another sister that sent me Panera bread every day at 11:30. I would get a knock on my door, and there'd be Panera bread downstairs waiting on me. So it didn't last long. My sickness did not last long. Maybe 2 days I felt sick, and by my 3rd day I was up and going again, and just walking around the house or just taking long walks by myself. But that was one of the great things that it was done for me recently. Back to you, Mr. Table Talk Master.
Thank you. It's an excellent example. And I would like to ask John Vessels if everyone used the word of the day.
Yes, everyone used the word of the day.
Terrific. And I'd like to ask Lee to give a timer's report.
Yes, everyone except for Manoush and Karen qualified on time. Both Manoush and Karen went overtime.
Okay. In that case, please send your votes by private chat to Mark Haddad. And on the 3 contestants that qualified, you can vote for either Mark Haddad on he discussed the biggest emergency he had went through. You can vote for Michael Dana, who told us about whether he prepared for things or whether he just responded off the cuff, or John Vessels if he's a warrior or a take it easy kind of guy. So please send your votes to Mark Haddad, and I will do likewise. And while I am doing that, Dagan's advised me that I can turn it over to Rob Giles. Rob's our GE tonight. So Rob, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Mr. Topic Master. Our evaluation portion of the meeting begins now. And what we do in the evaluation portion is to evaluate the meeting as a whole. I will give a report about that. We go over our duty holders reports for how everybody performed tonight. And we also have our evaluations for our prepared speakers. And those are the things that we normally start with first, and that's what I'm going to do tonight. So I'm going to dive right into our evaluators for the evening, which means that I'm going to start with our evaluator for our first speaker, and that would be Mark Schroeder, who is evaluating Cheryl Slagle's icebreaker speech, which was a snapshot of me and what brought me to Toastmasters. Please take it away, Mr. Mark Schroeder.
One quick second while I get my timer. Done. Fellow Toastmasters, guests, returning Toastmasters, and especially Cheryl. Wonderful speech tonight as an icebreaker. I'm going to be hard pressed to get everything in the length of time that I have, but because I have a lot of positives, a couple of things to consider working on, and what I thought was overall the best thing about the speech. I want to start off with the fact that you started off in a very unusual and different position, that offset screen is in order to see the background, which it was a bold start, caught attention, and indicated a certain amount of confidence. Whether you had it or not, it makes you think that you do. It does mean that we don't see a lot of other gestures, and you have to have a very expressive face, but you did have a very expressive face tonight, and that helps a lot with giving us a feeling of how you feel about the things that you're talking about. It's an icebreaker, so I'm also going to look for nervousness. I did not see a lot of nervousness. If you had it, it was not visible. You had a lot of smiles and eye contact, and those are some of the things that are the first to disappear when you get really nervous, and you seem to be doing that. With regard to vocal variety, I noticed a lot of very good examples of very good vocal variety. The epithetical or a job, when you put that in, the way that you slowed down when you say so laid back, that was very good. And I also, the inflection, the up and down in the voice in terms of the pitch and range for the incredible edible egg. I thought you had a very good, those are great examples of using your voice really, really well. Also, I didn't notice any use of notes. If you had notes that you were following, it's a little hard to tell sometimes if you're looking sideways in a situation like this on Zoom, but I did not notice anything at least. So it looked good from what we got to see. A couple of things to consider working on. The same thing that was a bold start, the offset, meant that we did not see a lot of gestures from it. So perhaps you could have considered, I don't know whether you want to necessarily move the camera, but maybe move back into the camera center after showing us the background. That was one of the things, because we had some lost opportunities there for some gestures. And I know you're not going to do everything offset, so there's no question here that we will see some gestures from you. But doing it for the entire speech with the same background, I thought you may have lost a little bit of an opportunity there. I'm surprised you got as much in as you got in. There was a lot of detail. It's still a trade-off. There's nothing wrong with, but I would have liked to have heard maybe a little bit more depth on a couple of the items, especially some of the musical items. That's just me. I'm sure everybody else, it depends on whether you want to do a breadth or whether you want to do depth. And in this particular case, there were so many things that I wanted to hear more about that I would have liked a little bit more depth. And again, that just may be me. But summing up, I thought the thing that you did the best was great personal disclosure. You covered an incredible amount of information and even used Amarillo, so you got some humor in there. And I'm looking forward to hearing some more of those great, wonderful stories that you gave us precursors and pre-shadows of. Mr. Toastmaster, or General Evaluator, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mark. We greatly appreciate that. Our second evaluator of the evening is Karen Lee, and she is evaluating EPAL's speech, which is titled EPAL of All Trades, Master of None. Karen Lee, can you please provide your evaluation for EPAL?
Mute.
I was just trying to pin Lee in my screen here so I can see him. There we go. Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and especially EPAL, I'm going to use a 3-2-1 structure in giving my evaluation for EPAL's speech. Wow, EPAL, you told us so much information about yourself. And I'm going to talk to you about the fact that even though you talked to us about having social anxiety, I didn't see any indication in myself that you look like you were nervous at all. You used great body language. You counted on your fingers and used great gestures. You stood, you looked at the camera to establish eye contact. To challenge yourself, you gave us so much information, so many different kinds of ideas that happened during your life, your childhood and your early adulthood. I would consider paring down your speech to, for instance, a main idea, 3 subtopics, and conclusion. I had trouble honing in on the main ideas in your speech because you were giving us so much good information. And one of the things that you might consider is varying your vocal variety, such as your vocal tone, voice rate, speed, and speech volume. In summary, thank you very much for your speech. Remember that you did do a very good job with your eye contact, your gestures, and your body language. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Karen. We appreciate that evaluation. At this point, I would like to ask our timer for the evening, Lee King, did both of our evaluators qualify on time?
Yes. Mark
Excellent.
Schroeder qualified at 3 minutes, 18 seconds, and Karen spoke for 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lee. At this point, if you would please, if you have any comments for either Karen or for Mark, please send a private chat to them regarding their evaluations. Otherwise, please go ahead and send a private chat to Mr. Markedad regarding who you thought did a better job between Karen Lee and Mark Schroeder in their evaluations tonight. And he will tally that count for the best evaluator for the evening. And we'll find out who the winner is between those two later on this evening. At this point, while you're doing that, I have a couple of directions I can go. I can either give my general evaluation for the entire meeting, or I can hand it off to the duty holders and then give my evaluation after they're done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually give them an opportunity to evaluate me this evening. And therefore, I'm going to give my report for the meeting and then go into the duty holders. So to begin with, I want to say that we had good interaction and good proactive nature prior to the meeting and getting the meeting all set up, getting roles filled. We had a volunteer come in and was able to take on roles that a couple of our members weren't able to make and fulfill tonight. Our Toastmaster did a great job in engaging and pulling that volunteer in and taking advantage of that, as well as adjusting everything else that he needed to adjust in order to get the meeting completed and ready to go. I thought that the theme for the meeting for our Toastmaster Day again was a great and appropriate theme, considering what we all went through last week and what some of us are still going through tonight and this week. Something that we can apply to in all of our lives moving forward to try to help ourselves and prevent or be a little bit more proactive in that regard. So being ready and also helping people out. And you mentioned the Boy Scouts, and I thought that was a great way to add that in. And it's very impactful when you start to bring in some well-known names and associations. So I thought you did a great job with that. And you gave us great examples throughout. Our duty holders at the beginning gave great detailed descriptions of their duties, and that's always well appreciated. Our topic master did a great job with carrying the theme into the topics for the evening. And all the topics I thought were great because they caused some thought, but yet they were something that, as I like to say, were answerable. They weren't something that were so difficult that we had to struggle, that the topic contestants had to struggle with. So I thought you did a great job with that, Mark Sims. Our topic contestants, phenomenal job across the board, I thought, and incredible that they all used the word of the day. Unfortunately, a couple did not qualify in time, but the content was so good that doesn't even bother me. But moving further on from that into our evaluators for the evening, I thought both evaluations were great. The main things that we look for in evaluations are positive feedback and then constructive feedback. So those were some good things from both of our evaluators. Mark Schroeder pointed out, no notes for Cheryl and their first time speaking, or at least apparently no notes, no seeming look of nervousness. He pointed out good things and gave examples for those, talking about facial gestures, even though she didn't have much in the way of her body to see any other gesture. So the compensation was good. He did point out that, showing the background, which was good for the appropriateness of that photo in the background. He mentioned also the eye contact, which was seemingly there, and the vocal variety and the pace, which is always good. And that's something that is actually tough, even for some of the veteran Toastmasters to do. So a great job with that and great examples. He also gave some constructive feedback, some things that she could work on, that Cheryl could work on, which would be to actually maybe shift yourself at some point during the speech so that we could see more of you and perhaps more gestures that might aid in what was going on. Karen, I thought you also did a great job with pointing out positive things. Again, you mentioned for EPAL that no nervousness. You mentioned that he had some good gestures as well. He had good eye contact. You did suggest that possibly that he reduced the content in order to maybe make it a little bit more succinct And that's definitely a difficult balance, especially when you have a lot of content that you want to bring in so that you can really exaggerate the point that you're trying to make. So, but it was a good suggestion for him to at least think about. And then you also mentioned that perhaps some vocal variety. So all good examples between both of our evaluators tonight. So I thought both of you did a fantastic job. And beyond all of that, I think that we just had a great meeting overall. We had volunteers that came in. We had volunteers that filled roles. We had people that came in as guests and participated as well. So we had, I think, full participation among everybody. I don't think that there was anybody in our meeting tonight that did not participate in some way, which is what we really want. We want people to be able to there and start to grow or refine their skills, polish their skills. So I thought it was a fantastic meeting overall. And we get to go through one more thing tonight before we actually finish the evaluation portion, and that is to go through our duty holders for the evening. And I'm going to start with our grammarian, just because they're listed on the agenda first with that, and that is Mr. John Vessels. So John, can you please tell us what you heard as grammarian?
Okay, what did I hear? Well, let's get started. I've got a whole paragraph here. We're going to have to repeat all of Paul's speech. Great things: adventurous, nomadic, friend group, trudge through my teens, diverse adventures, smattering, personal, can't read my writing, personal toolbox, daunting, he used concoct, chasing excellence, happiness meter, all great phrases. He's clearly got some grammatical chops going on. So that was a great job. Mr. Sims, elaborative. I thought that was interesting. Who else? Lost it. I had one someplace else. What was that? Anyway, everybody did a really good job overall. We had a lot of exceptionary uses of the English language tonight from Paul, and nothing really awful. So everything's great tonight. Back to you, G.
Thank you very much, John. I agree. I think there were a lot of great phrases that were concocted throughout the meeting. So that was great. Our next duty holder that I want to go to is our counter for the evening. And this is one of our visiting members, former members, and it is Mark Haddad. Mark, can you tell us what you heard tonight as far as ahs and ums?
Sure thing. I'd like to say I like John's last comment. He didn't hear anything awful. So that's always a good thing. Nothing, or was it nothing too awful? That's always great. All right, just going through the meeting in order, starting with Dagan. Your crutch word is you know, and you speak really quickly. So a lot of times it's so brief and quick that it's like it doesn't even, I was sometimes even trying to ding you and I'm like, did I hear it? I think I heard it. Maybe I didn't, but eventually it did. I did see some of that repetition in there. That's definitely your crutch word. I was trying to ding you diligently, and I did notice that into the second portion, you got better. So I don't know if it was me being annoying or not, and you being aware of it or what, but I did notice that. So just something to think about. You are a seasoned Toastmaster. I'm sure you can get better with that if you look out for it. Prepared speeches. I thought both you guys did a great job, because for both relatively new speakers, I heard one from each of you, and that's pretty excellent. I probably had more myself just in the amount of time I've been speaking. Where are we? Table topics. See, I just did it again. Mark Sims, you were clean as per usual. Myself, I didn't check, but I probably had a few in there. Munish was clean. Michael, you had 2 ums. You do get a point for catching one yourself and self-correcting. And 1 so as kind of a transition, so just keep that in mind. Usually 1 or 2 times is fine. If you do it multiple times, then it can be distracting. John Vessels, you had a couple you knows, and I got to ding you once in the evaluation for an but overall pretty clean. Karen, in table topics, I gave you an accidental ding. I'm sorry about that. And I don't know if that threw you off because you were clean to start. And then towards the end, there were some ums. I counted 3 or 4 ums towards the end. It could have just been because you were thinking and pausing, and that's when the ums start to creep in. Or again, maybe just my fault for ringing the bell falsely. So I apologize. Evaluations, Mark Schroeder. I always consider it a win if I can catch in any filler word. Unfortunately, today I lost a battle. I didn't catch one. Karen, same thing, just very, very polished in general, very hard to catch you guys with a filler word. So those were clean. Rob Giles, first off, I do want to just verify, you're not actually at Ozona's, right? That's a virtual background. Okay, because if anyone's going to physically go there and set up there so make it feel more normal, it would be you. But I figured it's virtual. Very cool though. I just caught one, towards the end. I pressed the button, but it didn't actually press it, and you can't. It doesn't work if it's too late. So, but aside from that, very, very clean for a long evaluation. That's great. And that's all I have. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We greatly appreciate that very detailed report. Our next duty holder that I'm going to go to for a report is our posture monitor. And our posture monitor tonight is Karen Smith. Karen, can you please give us your report of what you saw tonight?
Okay. Good evening, you all. Good evening, Toastmasters. I started with So Miss Cheryl Slagle, very expressive. Didn't see a lot of her body, so her face was very expressive, and I appreciate that. And Paul had quite a few. I like the fact that he stepped back initially, and when you step back, I could see a lot of his posture once he stepped back. And once he stepped back and greeted us, then stepped back, and then I can see more of his posture, the fact that he stepped back. And then he would count on, I think, the different places he lived, and also his character traits. He also counted his character traits, which would let you know there was quite a few character traits that he had. So those were positive. It attracted to his speech. And Miss Karen Lee, is closer to the monitor. So I can't see anything going on. I can't see anything. I just see your face. I feel like if you would step back more so like Paul, then I could see more of your posture, but I just can't see any posture because you're very close to the monitor. And on the table topics, of course, Munish, can I pronounce his name, Munish was very dramatic with his use of words. He was like, it's very cold here, or cold here, and to pray. And so he had quite a few gestures that made his speech very dramatic. And so you would have to listen to, it would draw you in, you would have to listen to his speech, which is what we want. And it's quite interesting. And then at the end, our general evaluator, Rob, the use of his hands also made his speech. It gave depth to his synopsis. It gave depth to it, the fact that he was utilizing his work. Dagan, you talk with your hands, but initially I felt like it was distracting. But as we talked about, as we talked about caring for people, it made me feel like you were caring. It kind of went together. It went together as a whole. So that is the end of me. Back to you, Mr. Table Topic Master.
Thank you very much, Karen. We appreciate it. Again, another great report for our duty holders. And at this point, I'm going to call for a vote again for the best of the big three. And the big three, if you are unaware, are our Toastmaster of the evening. That would be Dagan Newlin. And then there is our topic master, who is Mark Sims. And then our general evaluator, which is yours truly, Rob Giles. So please go ahead and send a vote to Mark Haddad. He is our vote counter. Send a private chat to him regarding who you thought did best as far as our Toastmaster Dagan Newland, Topic Master Mark Sims, or our General Evaluator Rob Giles. And while you're doing that, I'm going to actually pass the meeting over to our club president for our business portion of the meeting. Please help me to welcome Club President, Mr. Mark Sims.
Thank you, Rob. It's very interesting tonight that 3 visitors actually have Toastmasters meeting experience with us. Let me first of all start, Michael, Dana, with you. And so you indicated you had been a member of the club quite some time ago. I don't think I've ever got to meet you before. So thank you for coming tonight. And with your perspective, you were here a long time ago, you're here tonight. What's changed, or what's your impressions about tonight?
Yeah, real quick, let's just talk about how long he's been a member. Mike, Dana, I don't know exactly what day you joined, but I know you joined the Yahoo group on 11/20 of 2002, not to throw you under the bus.
Wow.
So that goes back quite a ways. Glad to have you back, Mike. Go ahead with your answer.
Okay, what was the question was what's changed besides COVID, a pandemic? Oh my gosh, there's so much that's changed. I think that the 2 icebreakers just I saw tonight, just from what I remember, those were really great icebreakers. You both have well, I'm saying just both speeches were a great introduction. They were constructed well, and if you were nervous or it just didn't appear at all. So what's changed? There's just so many things have changed. I guess the one thing that draws me back is that even though I haven't been coming to Toastmasters meetings, it was very influential on when I got involved with Toastmasters. I had a problem with public speaking. I realized it and I had to work on it because I took a position with the city of Dallas where I had to go out and do presentations. And I think one of the first ones I had to do was over 100 people in the audience, and I couldn't do it. You know, I mean, I was falling apart, and eventually I got better at it. I still use ums and ahs, but what I guess I got out of it was that really, if you're just keep it real and you're genuine and you prepare, people appreciate that. Anyway, it helped me tremendously. And then later on, I would bring Toastmasters up. So I don't know if anybody ever joined Toastmasters, because I'd always tell people, if you have a problem with public speaking, this is the place to go. So much it affected me that I even have my own bell. See that? I mean, come on, how many people have that? When people walk in my room, you know, if their posture's wrong or they go, I hit the bell or something. I don't really do that, but I appreciate being here. It's great to visit. I hope we can get back to a day where we can all meet, because the social aspect of Toastmasters, I don't know if that's still, I asked you if you have post Toasties. I remember the friendships and meeting people, and it was a lot of fun because you meet a lot of people from all over. I noticed we have a good variety of people here today, and that was really great. The social aspect of it was also very enjoyable. Hearing people's stories and backgrounds, music, some of the things that Yi said, you know, I can relate to. It's just always great. I had such a great time with it. So hopefully I'll be back. I'll bring my wife next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
Mike,
please do
Mike
come
had-
back.
I was going to say, Mike had mentioned he had actually tried to come to a couple of our meetings right before he moved out of town, but things came up, so he had not been able to. Otherwise, a lot of you would have had a chance to meet him right before he moved out of town.
Okay, great. Well, please do come back again. Yeah, please do bring your wife. Please do feel free to rejoin if your time and schedule permits. So it's very nice to meet you tonight. And next guest, obviously no stranger whatsoever, Mark Haddad. What's going on with you these days, partner?
Hey guys, always good to be back. There was an always enjoy dropping in with you guys. I tend to do it every few months, as some of the regulars know, and it's always great to see you. Same thing here, just working from home, realizing that without practice, speaking can get worse off. So I try to keep that up when I can, and it kind of comes and goes with work. But it's always good to be here. Good to see you guys, and hopefully I can be a little bit more regular about stopping in, or maybe rejoining down the road.
That would be great. Thanks for being here tonight. And I'd like to ask Munish, that we saw you a few times around the holidays. For starters, good to see you again, but anything you want to share with us? And let me see.
He could be,
Oh,
I was gonna say he could be, because I think it's like 5 or 6 a.m. there. So he may
okay.
have, he may have gone to take a nap, although I think he's an early riser, so he may have gone to take a walk or something.
Gotcha. Okay. In that case, the next thing I want to bring up in our now our business meeting is we obviously have a club contest next week, Thursday, March the 4th. And we have contestants for table topics. My recollection is that was Karen Lee and Lee King. And Rob, a few nights ago, you mentioned we might have a international speech contestant. Do we?
At this point, it is tentative. We have a hopeful, and I will refrain and let it be a surprise if that's the case, but hopefully we will know in the next couple of days as to whether we do or not. And I will obviously pass that along to you because you are the contest master. I would ask if you and Mark Schroeder could hang out with me a little bit after the meeting here to kind of go over a few things regarding that. But I do also want to mention, if I could, that beyond our club contest next week, we do have an area contest, Area 33 contest, so that the winner or winners from this coming contest this next Thursday will move on to the area contest on March 20th at 1 p.m. So March 20th at 1 p.m. If you want to cheer on our club in the area contest, please do so. I will be sending out information for that as we get closer to that time. And we may need volunteers. I don't know exactly what I will need for that, but we also may need volunteers to help out one of our sister clubs in Area 33 for their club contest. I'm trying to work on that, and we may be bringing in some of them to help us out with our club contest next week, depending on how quickly I can get in touch with them over the next couple of days. But beyond that, I think that's all that I have. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. So there is still room for an international speech contestant for next week. So please let us know, let Rob, Mark Schroeder, and I know as soon as possible if you want to do this, because it's a great opportunity, especially if you win and you go to the next level and you speak in front of a strange, newer group. Great experience. And next thing on the agenda is we're in the midst of dues renewals. Dagan, would you like to give us a report on that?
Yes, I sent out invoices to all the current members. I have to go in here and look exactly how many people paid, but we had quite a few people pay already. Now I know when I first sent those invoices out, I sent them as due immediately, which was my fault. So you got in their email the next day. But for the ones that had not paid yet, I will have to go in there and manually send a reminder. Then I'll send another reminder. If you still haven't paid by the end of the month, next month, and I'll send another reminder. So just remember, if you haven't paid, the dues are due. If you want to, for me to send it again real quick, I'll go ahead and do that next day or two, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. And thank you. The original notices you sent out are very convenient. Just a few clicks, put in a little information, and you are done. And so please, everyone, if you've not had a chance to renew, please do that. We want you, we need you. We had a great group tonight. So the more we can do that, the more fun the meetings are. Earlier on, Mark Haddad asked about Rob's background, the Zona's background, which leads me to ask Mark Schroeder, if you had any recent discussions with the Zonas.
No, I have not contacted them in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I may, just because we're coming into a new month, I may to let them know.
Okay.
But I have certainly not been bothering them every week. They kind of know what our status is, and they certainly know that Dallas is still red. So.
Okay. Thank you. We definitely look forward to the time where we can be there in person, because that stage looks kind of sad in Rob's background. And one thing I want to bring up is my thinking is for an officers meeting, after we have had the club contest next week, let's say the week after that, we can, by then we'll have a pretty good fix on renewals. We probably will need to have a meeting to kind of strategize for the remainder of this particular term that we are in. So let's keep that in mind. We went over a few things already that we would cover in an officers meeting, but every so once in a while, it's good just to put our heads together. And before we hear about our award winners, does anyone else have any business to bring up? In that case, I'd like to ask our vote counter, Mark Haddad, to tell us who the winners are.
Absolutely. Fellow Toastmasters, there are a lot of major individual awards out there. Vince Lombardi Trophy, Olympic gold medals, MVP awards. I would argue that none of them can compete with the esteemed virtual Toastmasters ribbon. So I will go down the list here. Can we get a drum roll, please? Our best speaker goes to E. Paul. Our best table topics master, it was close, but it goes to me. Best evaluator goes to Mark Schroeder. And finally, our best of the big three goes to, drum roll, Dagan.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone. And hang around a few minutes if you want to. It definitely sounds like Rob and Mark Schroeder and I need to put our heads together for the pending contest. So y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody. As you've noticed, I did not have to use this particular screen share too often tonight. Thank you all for paying attention to your mute buttons. It's greatly appreciated, makes our job a lot easier. With that, I will stop our meeting in 3, or recording rather, in 3, 2,